These past couple of days, the South Lawn of the White House in Washington has been buzzing with activity. The roar of cement mixers and heavy cranes fills the air. President Trump, looking quite pleased with himself, boasted to reporters that he's spending $6 million on this project. He's using the hardest granite in the world to build a brand new helicopter landing pad for the White House. Why the rush? Because in just over 2 months, on September 24th, Xi Jinping will be visiting Washington. Trump wants to welcome this epic summit of world leaders with the grandest ceremony and the hardest rock. Doesn't this look like the beginning of a spring thaw and reconciliation between great powers? Don't be fooled by the smokescreen on the White House lawn. While Trump is laying down the most prestigious granite with one hand, with the other, he's already quietly reaching for the other side's steel furnace. Just 4 days before construction began on this helipad, the U.S. Department of Commerce suddenly issued a thunderous order in a very obscure corner. Bypassing all the usual procedures, they ordered a global manhunt within just 14 days for a kind of black rock that looks the dirtiest and most unremarkable. What exactly is going on here? What secret does that black rock hold? How can it directly choke the neck of American aircraft carriers and nuclear submarines? Today, we're going to take you to see the double-faced Tai Chi that Washington is performing. If you've had a chance to pass by the White House in the past few days, you'll notice it's basically turned into a huge construction site. The lively MMA Octagon arena that was there not long ago has just been dismantled. The grass on the lawn hasn't even recovered yet, and heavy machinery has already rolled back onto this green space that symbolizes the heart of American power. On July 6th, Trump was in the Oval Office signing documents while acting like a construction foreman. He enthusiastically chatted with the media about his latest masterpiece. He said, "We're going to build an extremely magnificent helipad, all granite with a hand-carved stone centerpiece and inlaid with a huge White House emblem." A lot of people burst out laughing when they heard this, thinking it really fits Trump's usual taste. He likes things grand, he likes luxury, but then Trump explained a very practical reason. He said the old presidential helicopter was just too outdated, and now the U.S. military has replaced it with a brand new generation of Sikorsky VR-92A Patriot helicopters. The engines on these new helicopters are just too powerful. Every time it landed, the high-temperature exhaust from the tailpipe would blow out such a strong stream of hot air that it would rip the grass on the south lawn out by the roots, burning it all black. Shaking his head, Trump complained that as soon as the helicopter landed, half the turf would end up right at the door of the Oval Office. So in order to withstand the power of this steel beast, regular concrete just wouldn't cut it. They had to use the hardest, most heat-resistant stone in the world, granite. Now, at this point, you might be thinking, isn't this just an amusing story about White House maintenance? So what's the big deal? The key point is, why now? Why do they have to do this construction in the sweltering heat of July? When talking to reporters about the progress of the helipad and the new White House banquet hall, someone accidentally let something slip. He said, "I expect President Xi will come here around late September, about the 24th. We need a huge banquet hall, one that can hold several thousand people, because everyone wants to meet him." In mid-May this year, Trump had just completed a historic visit to China. At that time, the two of them toasted each other in the Golden Hall of the Great Hall of the People in Beijing, and Trump enthusiastically invited Xi Jinping to visit the United States. Unexpectedly, just 2 months later, the White House began rushing to upgrade its facilities. September 24th happens to coincide with the high-level meetings of the United Nations General Assembly in New York. So what does that mean? This is going to be a super Trump-Xi summit under the global spotlight. Look, what kind of posture is Trump striking in front of the cameras? It's the art of the deal, the highest level of courtesy. They use the hardest granite tarmac to receive the other side's plane and a brand new banquet hall that can hold thousands to create a harmonious atmosphere of great power reconciliation and strategic stability. All of this, wrapped up by countless media outlets, is practically a safe harbor for China-U.S. relations after weathering so many storms. But history has proven time and again that politicians often say one thing and do another. So while the whole world's attention was drawn to the White House's South Lawn lawnmowers and the granite, a regulation that went unnoticed by the public was quietly signed and issued in the office of the U.S. Department of Commerce's Bureau of Industry and Security on July 2nd. This time, what the United States is targeting is a kind of black, even somewhat dirty stone that is always laying at the very bottom of heavy industry. So, what kind of hidden cards and strategies are really at play behind all this? 250 years ago, this land of America gave countless people the chance to pursue freedom. So, at this moment full of historical significance, our long term partner, the quality e commerce brand Blueberry Premium, is launching a special promotion to celebrate 250 years of American independence and the protection of health. The event runs until July 31st. Just click the link below, buy what you like, and enter my exclusive promo code at checkout. By using the code WEYUV, you can not only enjoy a 15% discount, but also take home exquisite limited edition National Day gifts. This time, the gifts include beautifully crafted commemorative coins and a special edition commemorative flag, both custom made for the 250th anniversary. Quantities are extremely limited and will be given out while supplies last. For more details, check out the comments section. All right, let me introduce our star product, the Jeju Island Red Sea Cucumber Wellness Gel from Korea. Why is it always in such high demand and short supply? It's because it's hand harvested by the Hanyo, the female divers of Jeju Island. The yield of wild red sea cucumbers is actually extremely limited. What's even more important is that the repurchase rate is incredibly high. A lot of our viewers buy it for the whole family to enjoy together. If you often feel tired, have trouble sleeping, or lack energy, these are usually signs that your body has been depleted over time and is running low on vitality. That's where this Red Sea Cucumber Wellness Gel comes in. It's rich in sea cucumber saponins, sea cucumber polysaccharides, and collagen, which can help our bodies gradually restore vitality from the inside out. Many viewers have given feedback that after taking it for a while, their sleep improved. They could sleep soundly through the night. Some even experienced significant relief from chronic leg cramps and joint discomfort. Of course, results vary from person to person, and I want to remind everyone that this is a high-quality health supplement. It's not a medicine, its main purpose is daily nourishment and conditioning. As the United States celebrates its 250th Independence Day, let's also share in the spirit of freedom and take even better care of our own and our family's health. This regulation, officially announced by the U.S. Department of Commerce on July 2nd, is called the initiation of a Section 232 national security investigation on imports of anthracite coal. Many people aren't familiar with trade laws and might not have any idea what a Section 232 investigation is, so let's give everyone a quick explanation. This is actually a powerful tool in U.S. trade law. According to Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act of 1962, if the U.S. Department of Commerce believes that the quantity or circumstances of imports of a certain product threaten U.S. national security, then the president can bypass Congress and directly impose punitive tariffs or even comprehensive import quota restrictions on the entire world. Back in Trump's first term, when he wielded the big stick of steel and aluminum tariffs against the world, it was this very law he used. However, this time, the 232 investigation has an extremely strange rhythm to it. So, in the normal U.S. administrative process, how long does a national security investigation involving global trade usually take? At the very least, a few months. At most, more than half a year. The authorities need to issue an official announcement, hold public hearings, allow companies from various countries to submit reports, and have tariff lawyers debate back and forth repeatedly. Only after all that can they finally present a thick assessment report to the president. However, this time, the U.S. Department of Commerce's Bureau of Industry and Security acted as if there was a fire burning behind them. They made the window for public assessment and submitting opinions extremely short, requiring all interested parties to submit all their comments by July 21st. From the official publication in the Federal Register on July 7th to the deadline on July 21st, there are only 14 short days in between. In Washington, where procedural justice and bureaucratic red tape are the norm, this is like a bomb squad cutting the wire in the final seconds. What does this tell us? It suggests that the U.S. side has received some extremely urgent intelligence or is feeling a sense of suffocating pressure that can't wait any longer. To the point where they had to put up this legal barrier as quickly as possible. This really leaves people scratching their heads. We all know that the United States is one of the top energy giants in the world, with so much shale gas that they can't even use it all. Coal has been exported for years, so what exactly is this anthracite, and why is it so special? Why would it make the U.S. Department of Commerce, from the world's #1 superpower, panic so much that they would launch an emergency investigation into this black rock in just 14 days? It's not ordinary. It's the most elite and experienced member of the entire coal family, having undergone millions of years of high temperature and pressure deep underground. Its carbon content reaches as high as 86%, up to 97%, with almost no volatile impurities. When it burns, it produces extremely high heat and almost no smoke. To the average person, isn't this just a premium fuel? At most, you'd use it to keep warm in the winter. But if you ask the manager of a steel plant, he'll tell you this isn't just fuel, it's the vitamin of modern heavy industry, and even more so, the backbone for the revival of a major nation's military industry. So, what exactly is a piece of black coal, and how is it connected to things like American aircraft carriers, missiles, tanks, and armored vehicles? Behind all this, it actually exposes a fatal Achilles heel in the midst of America's entire national strategic transformation, a deadly weakness. To really explain this story, we first need to talk about a green revolution in the modern steel industry. In most people's minds, what does a steel mill look like? Huge blast furnaces, workers in protective gear, molten iron flowing inside, thick black smoke billowing outside. It's all made by burning massive amounts of coke and iron ore. This is what's called blast furnace steelmaking. The traditional method is heavy and robust, but it causes massive pollution and consumes huge amounts of energy. So what about the past decade or so? In pursuit of environmental protection and carbon neutrality, the US and Europe have been pushing hard to transform the steel industry. They've been dismantling those old blast furnaces one by one and replacing them with more advanced and cleaner electric arc furnaces, or EAFs for short. So what's so impressive about these electric arc furnaces? It doesn't need to start by burning iron ore. Instead, it uses ultra-high-powered electric arcs to generate temperatures of several thousand degrees, directly melting scrap steel and then refining it. This method is not only environmentally friendly but also extremely efficient. By 2026, as of today, a whopping 70% of steel produced in the United States is already made using these high-tech electric arc furnaces. America's proud automobile industry, its towering skyscrapers, even the Pentagon's annual purchases of armored plates and the decks of warships, most of these all rely on the output from these electric arc furnaces. However, electric arc furnaces have a fatal technical weakness. After scrap steel is melted, the carbon content inside is uncontrollable. If you want to turn a batch of scrap iron slag into military-grade special steel that can withstand missile strikes, or into ultra-high-strength deck steel that can handle carrier-based aircraft taking off and landing, the steel maker must add a key additive to the molten steel. This additive needs to serve both as a foaming agent to protect the furnace lining and as a carburizer to adjust the carbon content. The hardness of the material, this key additive is high-purity smokeless coal. You can think of it like a top chef sprinkling the finest truffles at the end of preparing a gourmet gesh. Without this smokeless coal, even if your electric arc furnace is burning at thousands of degrees and powered by the largest electric grid in the US, what you produce will still just be ordinary brittle iron. You can't even use it to make defense weapons. A lot of people might ask, hey, that doesn't sound right. Isn't there the famous Pennsylvania Appalachian coal mining region in American history? Wasn't that a world-class treasure trove of anthracite coal? That's right, but in an internal report last year, the U.S. Department of Energy lamented that as the traditional Appalachian coal mining region in the U.S. continues to shrink, The domestic anthracite mining and processing industry has suffered predatory blows in recent years from low-priced foreign products and targeted government subsidies. Although the United States is overall a coal exporting country, most of that is ordinary thermal coal used for power generation. When it comes to high purity specialty anthracite, which is essential for military grade electric arc furnaces, the U.S. suddenly realized that it had fallen into a terrifying black hole. Even though they have the world's most advanced electric arc furnaces, they're missing the vitamin needed for steelmaking. The core control of its global supply chain is actually not in its own hands. So, over all these years, where has the steady supply of anthracite in American steel mills actually come from? First, let me tell you an astonishing fact. The country that produces the most anthracite in the world is, without a doubt, China. According to global statistics from the International Energy Agency, China consistently takes the absolute lion's share of global anthracite production, accounting for more than 70%. So, what does this mean? When it comes to the capacity for mining, selecting, and refining anthracite, China is the undisputed global superpower. Trailing behind are countries like Russia, Ukraine, North Korea, and Vietnam. Have you noticed? Most of these major producing countries are classified by the United States as non-traditional allies or even as sensitive geopolitical regions. What about the United States itself? The U.S. does have abundant anthracite reserves, but over the past 20 or 30 years, due to well-known strict environmental regulations, persistently high labor costs, and the aging of mining areas, domestic anthracite production in the U.S. has shrunk significantly, so much so that it now accounts for only about 1% of the country's total coal output. This has led to an extremely ironic phenomenon in globalization. In pursuit of maximum profit, America's steel giants leave their own coal untouched underground and instead rely for years on cheap imports from the international market. So, where exactly has the bulk of the anthracite coal used in American steel mills come from in recent years? If you look at the latest U.S. Customs import data, you'll notice something very interesting. Peru is on the list. In 2025, more than 60% of the anthracite coal imported by the United States came from this South American country, while the remaining share was split between the United Kingdom and China. On the surface, Peru is a neutral Latin American country with pretty good relations with the United States. The Pentagon has always believed that keeping the anthracite coal supply chain in Latin America's backyard was very safe. But in early July this year, the Trump administration's Department of Commerce was suddenly jolted awake. In a classified report, they discovered two chilling and deeply unsettling truths. First, who is the shadowy controller behind Peru's anthracite coal? Over the past few decades, Chinese capital has poured into Peru with overwhelming infrastructure investments, such as the recently opened Chancay port. Behind Peru's mining, railway transportation, and even port operations, you can see the presence of Chinese investment groups and state subsidies. In other words, while Peru's coal and zinc may be Peruvian in name, the real control over the faucet is actually in someone else's hands. Secondly, this isn't just ordinary trade, it's predatory pricing. The United States directly called this out in its Section 232 investigation announcement. Foreign governments have long used subsidies to sell anthracite coal to the United States at unfairly low prices, dumping it in a steady stream. This creates a boiling frog trap. The cheaper foreign anthracite gets, the faster the last few domestic anthracite mines in the U.S. are driven out of business. By 2026, the United States suddenly realizes that its own domestic production capacity is on the verge of disappearing, while its competitors have a clear grasp of every source in the global supply chain. This perfectly explains why the U.S. Department of Commerce resorted to a drastic 14-day blitz this time. The Trump administration realized that if they didn't wield the tariff stick and launch a rapid counterattack, the backbone of America's military industry would end up controlled by that invisible enemy. Throughout this year, the Trump administration has been loudly proclaiming its commitment to revitalize American manufacturing and to launch a comprehensive and massive revival of the U.S. military-industrial complex. The U.S. military wants to build more warships to patrol the Pacific and produce more tanks to respond to geopolitical conflicts. But all of these strategic ambitions are built on the foundation of domestic steel production. What if, in today's world, the global geopolitical situation suddenly deteriorates and the other side imposes retaliatory export controls on hidden strategic resources like Wuyanmei, similar to what was done with rare earths? The consequences would be devastating. 70% of America's green electric arc furnace steel production would be paralyzed within days due to a lack of high purity carbon sources. Without anthracite, there's no specialty steel. Without specialty steel, what will Lockheed Martin use to make Patriot missiles or General Dynamics to build submarines? The powerful U.S. military that Trump promised would instantly become a straw man without a backbone. This is why the U.S. Department of Commerce launched a Section 232 investigation on July 2nd and only gave the global supply chain 14 days for public comment. The reason is to act before opponents catch on or before September. They want to quickly finalize the legal framework before the Leaders Summit, then use tariffs or quotas to build a high wall, forcing American steel giants to shift the anthracite supply chain back to the U.S. or to absolutely safe allies. Now that we've talked about this, if we piece together the stories of these two stones, don't you feel an incredibly surreal tension? On one side, there's the $6 million granite helipad on the White House South Lawn, being rushed to completion to welcome the arrival of their rival. That's a stage under the spotlight, filled with handshakes, smiles, diplomatic rhetoric, and grand political visions for the future of major power relations. And on the other side, deep in the dark, scorching bottom of a steel furnace, the U.S. Department of Commerce is working at breakneck speed, pushing to the limit in just 14 days. They're trying to cut off heavy industry's dependence on certain foreign materials, fiercely guarding their own humble yet deadly piece of black smokeless coal. This is the truest and most sophisticated level of great power rivalry today, thanking in the open while making real moves in secret. As a master negotiator who's navigated both the business world and politics for decades, Trump knows exactly how to play this double game. He can have a pleasant conversation with you in Beijing's Great Hall of the People, and he can also host a state banquet for thousands in Washington in September, giving you all the respect and dignity befitting the leader of a major nation. Because he knows that making concessions in non-core areas and exchanging diplomatic pleasantries come at the lowest cost. But behind closed doors, when it comes to the industrial foundations that are vital to the nation's survival, his cabinet officials are working with detailed risk prevention checklists, carrying out a real and gradual decoupling, inch by inch, to mitigate risks. From high-tech chips to life-saving pharmaceutical biotechnology, and now even down to a single piece of coal used for steel making, nothing is left untouched. This kind of game, compared to the heated confrontations with military standoffs on the high seas, is actually even more breathtaking, because there's no bloodshed, no smoke, but it quietly strips away the other side's strategic leverage, one piece at a time, often without anyone even noticing. So, in the face of this third shoe dropped by the United States at the very foundation of heavy industry, will the other side just sit and wait for doom? When this 14-day Wuyanmei battle ends on July 21st, what kind of huge waves will be stirred up in the international steel market and in geopolitics? And then, the historic meeting on September 24th, right there on the Huaguanyan tarmac. And just how much more tension will this black coal secretly add to the negotiations at the table? In this grand game between major powers, the interplay of these two stones, one in the open, one in the shadows, has only just begun. All right, that's all for today's program. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy Wei Yu's storytelling analysis, remember to like, subscribe, and share. See you in the next episode.